I'm an educator. I did everything that I thought I was supposed to do. I did everything that I was told to do in order to make a better life for myself and to make a better life for my children. I did everything right, and I have $250,000 of student loan debt.
Shame!
So what my experience taught me is that the promise of social mobility in this country is a lie. In fact, doing everything right is widening the racial socioeconomic gaps. It's affecting us in the day-to-day, being able to afford a home. All of these things feel further and further out of reach, more than ever before for Black folks, for millennial families, for all of us. It's becoming further and further out of reach. This system is working exactly as it was intended, and we're going to topple it. Between the cost of living, war, climate change, and everlasting pandemic, it's hard not to lose hope. But I see the hope in us. I see the power in us.
Yes, yes.
I see the change happening because of us.
Yes, yes.
Last week, I got an alert on my phone. I woke up to a news headline that said, Biden administration notifies Congress of a $1 billion arms package to Israel. Absolutely, right? My first reaction was, okay. The man that said he can't do anything about broad-based student loan cancellation without congressional approval is notifying Congress of his plans to send billions to directly fund genocide and violently displace men, women, and children and babies. I was in disbelief, like, there's no way I'm reading this right. $1 billion? One time, right? It's happened multiple times. So he finds the billions to fund genocide, but can't send teachers, can't send doctors, can't send public servants to college without a lifetime sentence of death. That's criminal. We're demanding better. We're demanding to defund this genocide. Stop arming the Israeli government and military with these weapons that have effectively wiped out most people and all viable infrastructure in Gaza. It's criminal. We won't stand for it. We demand all student loans be canceled immediately. Joseph, you have proved to us that you have the coins. You have proved to us that you do not need congressional approval, and we are demanding an anti-racist institutional system that provides free access to public education for everybody. We're also coming for free access to public housing and health care and food and all public goods for everybody. Here today, our demand is simple. Fund education. Fund education and not genocide.
And President Biden, we are demanding that you do that with intensity, speed, and moral conviction.
We have some amazing guests with us today. I want to welcome up some brave voices in Congress that have continually and consistently stood on the right side of history. U.S. Representatives Cori Bush and Rashida Tlaib.
I love it. She's like, Joseph. I felt that.
Thank you all so much. So this is so incredibly important. You know, before the genocide in Gaza, I can tell you that many of us in Congress that have been pushing for clean water, clean air, fully funding our schools, ending homelessness in our country, and so much more have been saying it seems like over and over again that our country seems to find funds and money and courage when it comes to endless wars. You know, year after year, my colleagues tell me that there's no money for life-saving investments in our communities. As I continue to tell them how distressed it is to come through one of my high schools and see garbage bags over the drinking water fountains because they have no access to clean water. There's no money to invest in our public schools or pay our teachers a living wage. Again, a crisis that we have in our country. Or child care when we need it the most. Public can't seem to find the money for that. And then they turn around and pass another record-breaking, this is historic numbers. Seems like even if the Democrats are in control or the Republicans, we are now seeing $886 billion in military budget, sending another $14 billion to the Israeli government, and again, like our sister talked about, another $1 billion to support a genocide. I want you all to know since 1948, the United States, our country, has approved more than $141 billion in weapons to the Israeli government, which many, not me and myself or many of us, but many human rights organizations, including Amnesty International, B'Tselem, which is the largest Israeli human rights organization, Human Rights Watch, and so many others are saying it's an apartheid government. It's disgusting that many of my colleagues funnel billions of our tax dollars to the very same defense contractors that many of them are invested in and taking campaign donations from. Let me repeat that. Every time they press that yes button, every time they looked a blind eye when the administration sent more bombs and more weapons, my colleagues are making money off of death and destruction. Again, when they press yes, they also are pressing yes to their stock portfolios. These are the same defense contractors that are sending the bombs to murder innocent children and families in Gaza. You know, I introduced the Stop Politicians Profiting from War Act to bring a light to this, to put an end to this corruption and ban members of Congress from trading defense stocks. They should not be able to profit off of genocide. They should not be able to profit off of endless wars. Why is it that our president, the President of the United States, or as somebody called him, Joseph, moves with urgency to use every single tool in his disposal to bypass Congress and send more weapons to genocidal maniac Netanyahu and carry out a continued massacre in Gaza? Why? Why that we can't do the same thing for 40 million Americans still waiting for their for student help with their student loans? Instead of dragging students through rulemaking processes, the Biden administration has the full legal authority through executive order to cancel every penny of student debt under the Higher Education Act of 1965 today. I know this. I'm tired of my residents coming to me from town hall to our neighborhood service centers, talking to my staff about the fact that they wish that we had the money and support to increase Social Security for our seniors, for those that are struggling right now. Yeah, they come to us over and over again. Why can't they find the money for that, but they can find money for war? Many of which may not have a connection to Gaza or know what's happening in the genocide, but they can see that it seems for war, there seems to be overwhelming unconditional support. But when it comes to actual lives of our families here at home, from our children literally struggling with trauma from living in poverty, to the fact that many of our communities and neighborhoods continue to see a housing crisis that leaves them literally paying so much damn rent that they can't survive. For my constituents that continue to tell me over and over again, Rashida, when are we going to have access to clean drinking water? When? Why is it that we can't find the might and the money and the support for that, but we continue to find support for genocide? So I want to thank the Debt Collective for being courageous. You're absolutely right. You are not alone. You're absolutely right. We should be funding our students, funding our families, not a genocide. And I want you to know I'll continue to speak truth to power, because every single time I hear the hypocrisy in caucus or on the House floor, when they come running and saying, we can't let this happen, it's really distressing when I continue to see the fact that I'm saying to them, you can't continue to genocide happening. They continue to try to gaslight the American people and say it's not happening. You know, on the ride back here, I'm reading over and over again on my phone of the fact they're freaking out because the ICC is doing their job. The fact that the own White House that can't seem to find bipartisan will support for student debt and student cancellation in our country seems to be putting a lot of resources and money and support to try to gaslight all of us, to try to undermine what the ICC was created for, right? They were created to prevent a genocide. It may not give us justice today, but it is accountability that we need. And so as myself and I see my wonderful, amazing sister in service, we call ourselves Sisters Saving Lives. It is, we sit next to each other sometimes like we're in a church pew going, Did they just say that? And I'll tell you one example. One colleague came up to her and said, you know, that company needs to stop being in the company of genocide, supporting genocide. I looked at her, she looked at me, and I looked at him. I said, is this a divestment bill? My God, they seem to have the will when it comes to other various issues, when it comes to the economic structures that we have in our country that keeps our families and our residents in poverty. But know this, you will always have a partner in the United States Congress. I will always speak truth to power. I will always do it. I don't do it because I'm Palestinian. I also do it because, for me, coming from the most beautiful, blackest city in the country, the city of Detroit, it taught me, and please know this, that we didn't get the Civil Rights Act nor the right to organize unions and so much more transformative change in our country, but for the fact that we in the streets demanded that change. So let's continue to do that. Thank you all so much.
We officially have U.S. Representative Cori Bush.
So it seems like we've been doing a lot of mobilizing over the last, 7 months? But it didn't just start 7 months ago. Many of us have been in this fight for a long time, and so many have been in this fight for decades. But I want to say to those of you who are here, thank you for your fight. Thank you for standing and for the accountability push that you give us. Thank you for propping up and supporting and loving on my dear sister Rashida Tlaib. Let me tell you, the stories that she tells, look, they're so true. There are so many times we're on the floor and she's getting me together because I'm about to just go off on somebody on the floor, and she knows who I'm. It's always one person that I'm ready to light up after. And she literally will grab me by my dress and sit down. Let it go today. Just let it go. But good afternoon, everyone. And I'm going to use my script because I need the words. I don't want to get off. I'll go on a tangent on this issue, and I just want to make sure that I don't let my emotions today get in the way of what I need to say. So thank you, especially to Debt Collective, to Empower Change, to Democratic Socialists of America, to Listen to Michigan, and to Harriet's Wildest Dreams, and all the other folks in attendance today. You all, we have done so much work together, and the world knows it. The world has seen it, and the United States has had to be accountable in ways that it hasn't had to be before because of all of the folks that are here today and those you are connected to. So thank you for urging this important press conference today, urging our leaders to fund education and not genocide. As we stand here today, there are 43 million people whose collective debt that burden stands at a staggering $1.75 trillion. Shame. And at the same time, our defense budget is over $880 billion this year, which could pay for our student debt crisis in 2 years. If we prioritized our communities the way we prioritize endless war, we could wipe out all student debt. We could end the unhoused crisis. We could fund Medicare for all. We could fund the Green New Deal, and we could provide universal school meals. Instead, we are constantly told that our leaders, or told by our leaders, that we don't have the money. How are you going to pay for it? We don't have the money. We don't have the money to invest in our own people and our people's basic needs. But these are the same people, the same leaders who will easily and readily send tens of billions of dollars of taxpayer money for endless war and for genocide. We can always find more money for war, but never enough when it comes to public education, never enough when it comes to canceling student debt, never enough for pay raises for our teachers, never enough for universal child care. And even more, the United States government has been unlawfully supporting occupation, apartheid, and ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian people for decades. Empowered by U.S. weapons, communication systems, military training, and direct funding, the Israeli government has blatantly violated international law with impunity. I stand here today alongside students and organizers, advocates, my sister in service, Rashida Tlaib. We are here to say, fund education and not genocide. And I understand that some folks may ask why they should care about this issue. Why should we care about what's happening abroad? But the reality is there is a real and direct trade-off that is harming our communities. Our public universities and colleges have faced decades of divestment and disinvestment, which has created a two-tiered system that punishes low-income students with a lifetime of debt for the crime of just pursuing a higher education. And so as we face a dire shortage of teachers, nurses, physicians, and other professions that require an advanced degree, our students are choosing career paths that don't burden them with a lifetime of tens of thousands of dollars in student debt, and who can blame them? Government support for both K through 12 and higher education would undoubtedly help fill these employment gaps desperately and in the immediate, because that's what we need to support a diverse workforce. And so that's what our people want. We know it. That's what our people want. The people want a ceasefire. The people want to stop funding genocide and endless war. The people want to stop their taxpayer dollars from being used to bomb children. The people want the schools and universities in Gaza to be rebuilt, so a generation of Palestinian youth can build a new future. UNRWA has been callously blacklisted, and Gaza's universities we know have all been destroyed. So the people want well-funded public schools. The people want affordable housing. The people want health care. The people want investments that prevent violence and that promote safety, but we're talking about safety for all. The people want student debt cancellation. That's what the people want, and the people want it now, and that's what we are here to demand. And let's be clear about who we're demanding it from. It's the U.S. government. Our movement supports the voices of this majority. That's why I want to give a special shout out to Layla Elabed for your tireless work to hold our government accountable for its shameful enabling of the Israeli government's genocide in Gaza. Where's Layla? There's Layla. I also would like to acknowledge the courage and the sacrifices made by Tariq Habash and Lily Greenberg Call for your principled stance. You all of you, thank you for using your people power to push our government to do better, to center our shared humanity, to demand a ceasefire and an end to the genocide of Palestinians. I'd also like to thank and acknowledge the brave students who put their bodies on the line at college campuses across this country. The sacrifices of our students, as well as many faculty and community members across the country, from Washington University in St. Louis in my district to George Washington University here in DC and colleges all around the nation. You have joined in a long, historic line of anti-war activists who continue to mobilize and galvanize and organize to demand our government do better. And so I am proud to stand with every single one of you to lead in Congress alongside my sister Rashida as part of this coalition of those who seek to end this genocide by calling for an immediate and permanent ceasefire instead of sending these billions of dollars to support more war. More dollars to support the war crimes. Let's instead invest in our youth and education system right here at home. And so ceasefire now, ceasefire forever, fund our universities, fund our schools, and thank you every single one of you for inviting me, and thank you for changing the world.
Let's give it up again for Representative Cori Bush. We want to tell President Joe Biden, this is your debt, this is your climate, this is your housing, this is your child care, this is your education, this is your health care, these are your food deserts, this is your genocide. And our response is debt collection. Debt relief. What do we want? What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? If we don't get it, if we don't get it, I said, what do we want? When do we want it? Now. When do we want? Debt relief. When do we want it? Now. If we don't get it, shut it down. 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 Woo!
Thank you, Fari.
You're welcome, Rochelle.
All right, I'm going to introduce our next speaker. Our next speaker up is from Listen to Michigan. We have Layla Alabad.
Hi, thank you so much for Debt Collective for having me. My name is Layla Alabad, a leader of the Uncommitted National Movement. I am also a mother raising unapologetic Palestinian children who will one day also have to navigate the broken, inequitable, and for-profit education system. Our movement has been a vehicle for voters to use their voice of the ballot box to send a clear and powerful message to President Biden, his administration, and the Democratic Party that young people, students, Black and brown folks, Muslims, Christians, Jews, indigenous people, and all voters of moral consciousness reject our country's complicity in genocide. We have sent a message to demand a permanent and immediate ceasefire and end of unrestricted military funding to carry out Netanyahu's war crimes using our tax dollars, with over 500,000 uncommitted votes and counting across the nation. This is a resounding warning sign to Biden that his decision to put funding Israel's war in Gaza over our own democracy, over communities grieving the loss of loved ones, friends, and families, over the Palestinian Americans still unable to get out of Gaza, and the dozens of health aid workers who have been targeted and unable to leave, over protesters on our streets and students on our campuses using their First Amendment rights to protest and demand divestment, facing police brutality and intimidation. We have witnessed excessive use of force from police on university campuses against these students and disparaging language by leaders who put our students at risk. We are 229 days of destruction, displacement, and death of Palestinians in Gaza. But we are 76 years of occupation, apartheid, and ethnic cleansing of all Palestinians. Biden and his administration have chosen to fund bombing babies in Gaza instead of funding maternal care, reproductive care, education, or any of the things our communities and our children need to thrive. In Michigan alone, Flint still doesn't have clean water. There are 200 schools in the city of Detroit that have closed in the last 15 years. And Southeast Michiganders and rural communities throughout the state are paying some of the highest rates for energy in the country to an unreliable, money-hungry, privately owned utility company, where in some of our black and brown neighborhoods have not had updated infrastructure since World War II. Joseph R. Biden needs to do the right thing before it's too late. Fund education, not genocide. Thank you.
I just want to remind everyone there are water fountains by the bathroom. If you need water in the interim, there's water by the bathroom. We're going to do a quick picture, y'all.
I just like to say that Rashida's my sister. It's not the other way around.
I recorded your thing. I don't even know if you're in mine. Corey's coming. You guys, who else? You gotta come up.
Let's give some background music. Say free Palestine.
Free Palestine.
Free, free, free Palestine.
Free, free, free Palestine.
Say free Palestine.
Free Palestine.
Free, free, free Palestine.
Free, free, free Palestine.
Say free Palestine.
Free Palestine.
Free, free, free Palestine.
Free, free, free Palestine.
Okay, I think we're ready.
All right, give it up for the speakers that we've had so far. Next up, we have DC staffer, Tiffany Dina Lofton.
What's up, everybody? It's hot, but I know what's more uncomfortable is student loan debt, so I'm going to be out here, and I wrote mine down, too. I just want to, for folks who are observers, because we have a large gathering here in front of the Department of Education, but there have been some folks who have been witnessing the power of this space and walking over to find out what's going on and reading the signs. I want to be very clear. Yes, today, Joe Biden is taking credit for work that we have done, which is canceling $7.7 billion in student loan debt today. I don't think that that amounts to the $94 billion that Joe Biden has signed into law to give to foreign defense and aid. Somebody say the math is not mathing. The sun is messing up my thing. Okay. I want to start here. I want everybody in the heat or in the shade to just, if you can, close your eyes. And I want you to think about the first time you were congratulated for finishing something. Whether it was a test that you studied really hard for, a play that you might have been a part of, shout out to all my theater majors, an art project that you completed, a math equation that was really hard, or even just a school year. I never thought in those seasons of my life that I would be up on stage in front of a government building fighting for student loan debt cancellation. I never thought that we would be fighting for financial freedom just from learning. Now I think about the ancestors and the elders who fought for the same public school that I just said we were all a part of experiencing. Those who fought for women's rights in the education profession. Those who fought for benefits for those in the military and those who could not afford lunch. Those who fought for integration in our public school system. Those who are fighting right now to peacefully demonstrate at their campuses and keep away campus and police brutality. Those who are fighting for student loan debt cancellation right now. We are the beneficiaries of all of those elders. We are the beneficiaries of all of the fights that have taken place. And y'all are standing there like they didn't have to also stand in the sun with some signs at some point during the fight. So I need y'all to give it up for our elders and our ancestors. And now I want you to take a deep breath, and I want you to applaud and thank the person next to you. Because what CNN and MSNBC and what ABC and what Fox News is not going to do is thank you by name. So allow me to thank you, because my homeboy today, Wes Bellamy, who has 2 degrees, sent me a picture and tagged me on social media. $208,000 of his student loan debt today was canceled. And he sent it to me while I was at the to your neighbor real quick. Thank them for showing up when it matters. This year is a presidential election, and I'll be damned if while I'm breathing, they're going to take credit for the work that we have been doing for over a decade. I started this work as a student activist and organizer. I graduated from the University of California, Santa Cruz in Northern California. I have been to Palestine 3 times, twice to lead racial justice delegation, and the 3rd time for a wedding for one of my homeboys. I've been on the streets in DC, LA, Baltimore, Atlanta, Ferguson, Louisville, Oklahoma City, and Killeen, Texas. And I have seen the connections of violence on black and brown people here in the States, and the connections as it relates to what's happening not only in Gaza, but in Palestine and the apartheid and occupation there. And let's be very clear, it is all connected. It's connected to freeing Palestine. which is connected to diversity, equity, and inclusion programs at our institutions, which is connected to teachers' pay, which is connected to the Pell Grant, which is connected to predatory lending practitioners like Mohila who need to be destroyed and taken down, which is also connected to gun violence, which is also connected to mental health issues, which is also connected to democracy and the elections happening right now. But I'm very clear as to why I'm standing here on the stage. I'm here because America has its priority issues messed up. That's what hundreds of thousands of students across the country are doing right now. Educators are doing it, labor leaders are doing it, elected officials are doing it, religious leaders are doing it, and we're doing it right now. And I'm going to make sure that we correct society in this course to put humans first and not corporations and money. I don't know where the sign is. There it goes. We should be funding people, not bombs. That says books, but I mean people. So I want you all to do 3 things after this action's over. We always have a call to action. Number 1, I need you all to remind yourselves to stay in community. Because this work is so freaking hard, y'all, that when we go back home from Atlanta to, I live in Atlanta, by the way, now. Atlanta or LA or DC or Florida or New York or Baltimore or wherever it is that we came from, it's so easy to feel by yourself and lonely. It's so easy to feel defeated. It's so easy to feel like we can't move this big ass country by ourselves. And that's because we don't have to. With organizations like the Debt Collective, where I have found my family, we stay in community to organize and mobilize and move people into their power. So I don't care where you find the community, just make sure you stay in it. Number 2, I need you all to practice having tough conversations because that is the only thing that moves people's hearts. And my mentor, Cortland Cox, always says this is not a fight about law and policy, it's about changing the hearts and minds of people. And while we were at our press conference earlier today, this little white boy walked up and read our signs, and when he saw student loan debt cancellation, he couldn't have been older than 15. He shook his head and said no from a distance. He's 15. Maybe he's, I don't know how old he is, but he ain't old enough to have student loan debt at this point. And the fact that we are out here fighting for their future and they don't believe says that we need to have more tough conversations. And I'm going to tell you the truth. They're called tough conversations for a reason. They're tough. I don't always win those conversations. I walk away feeling like, damn, I didn't argue and get them on my side. But every time we have those conversations, it's practice. So keep practicing tough conversations. Last thing that I need us to do is to keep fighting. Fight against the urge to give up. Fight non-believers. Fight against the fear of failure. Because all we do is win. I believe that Palestine will be free. I believe that education will be free. I believe in black power, and I believe that we're going to be all right. So thank y'all for being out here with me and being my community. Now I have the distinct pleasure of introducing Tariq Kabash, who's an incredible poet and our brother. You want me to keep this up there?
No, you got it.
Okay.
That was amazing. I think it's so powerful to think about the intersectionality. Every single issue that we are facing right now and what we're witnessing across the other side of the world. And I didn't know exactly what I was going to say today until this weekend, traveling for a graduation, a high school graduation, and I was so proud of the 251 high school students who completed their educations and were excited about the next chapter of their life. But I was also thinking about the thousands of Palestinian children in Gaza right now who don't have that same opportunity to graduate, to finish their educations, that are trying to find ways to be able to continue to learn, to be able to provide safety for each other. And it broke my heart. I was so proud of the students at a high school graduation in the middle of America who were so brave walking on stage, holding signs, calling for ceasefires. These are high school kids. I mean, the chills that I had at no expectation, and the message that is resonating with this younger generation, regardless of who they are, what their identity is, if they're Palestinian, if they're white, if they're black, we are all human. We are all recognizing the pain and suffering that Palestinians are feeling in Gaza right now. And we are all trying to rationalize and understand what this administration is allowing to continue for over 8 months. And so what I want today to be about my little time here is about hypocrisy. We're going to talk about hypocrisy right now, because I worked in this building right here for 3 years. I was in the policy office, and I spent endless nights working on regulations, working on policies to fix a broken student loan system. I have watched the debt collective since the beginning of my career in higher education move the needle so far that people would initially laugh at the idea of canceling student debt to now seeing billions of dollars be canceled. Make no mistake, that shit does not happen without the debt collective. That does not happen without people making change. That does not happen without tough conversations. We have to reckon with the fact that we have a broken student loan system. And there are people in this building right now who understand that. They recognize that there are failures in this system that have weighed people down for decades. But you know what else? This administration has also used its power, used its influence to try and leverage everything it has to send billions of dollars in weapons to killing women and children and destroying schools in Gaza. And we cannot be silent about that. We have to call that out. What I saw when I worked in the Department of Education was a willingness to engage with the legal system, a willingness to reanalyze how we think about the Higher Education Act and how we think about student debt and how we can make it a little bit easier for millions of Americans who are suffering under the weight of that. I saw how we talked about public service loan forgiveness and income-driven repayment and canceling debt for predatory schools like ITT Tech and Corinthian colleges. That stuff couldn't have happened without the debt collective leading the way, but it did happen. We got to a point where we recognized what we could do within the law. And you know what? We let the law dictate where we could and where we could not. We even were over-conservative in how we thought about the law. You know where the administration was not thinking about the law? You know where this administration has been hypocritical? In whether we send billions of dollars in weapons to a country and to a government that continues to repeatedly violate U.S. law with our weapons and continues to violate international humanitarian law by killing civilians, by targeting journalists, by targeting humanitarian workers. And that hypocrisy cannot continue. We must be able to call that out. We must hold people accountable. And we heard incredible speeches from Rep. Tlaib. We heard incredible speeches from Rep. Bush about how members of Congress are terrified about the fact that the ICC is doing its job. And you know what? A lot of people are afraid right now because we have stood idly by while we decided to continuously send weapons and actually send billions of dollars of more weapons to continue the destruction of every institution of higher education in Gaza. And we have not heard the president say one time that that is unacceptable. We have not condemned it one time. But you know what we have condemned? We have condemned the lives of millions of Palestinians to manufactured starvation and to a genocide, and that ends now. That must end now. It's time for peace. It's time for a ceasefire. It's time for freedom for Palestinians. It's time for equal rights. It's time that we live our American values everywhere around the world and we end our hypocritical stance about who the law applies to and who it doesn't, we need new policies. We need to stand up for what is right. Thank you so much. I have the distinct pleasure to introduce an incredible friend of mine, an incredibly brave friend of mine, who last week said last week that she could not stand idly by while the president invoked her and her Jewish people in the name of what is happening now in Gaza. I want to introduce Lily Greenberg Call. She's incredible. She has such a great perspective, and she's such an incredible human being. Thank you so much.
Hi, everyone. I'm really honored to be here with you today. Thank you so much, Tarek, for your friendship, for your leadership, for your beautiful words, for your bravery. A week ago today, I resigned from the Biden administration because, as an American Jew, as a human being, I could no longer serve this president, represent this administration, who is funding the genocide of Palestinians and ignoring the voice of the American people who have made their wish loud and clear. Ceasefire now! And while I may no longer be in the federal government, be in this administration, in being here, I'm upholding the oath I took to serve the American people, to listen to all of you, to build a shared future for all of us. Because I want that shared future for my loved ones in the Holy Land, Israeli and Palestinian. I want it for my family here. Palestinians deserve freedom and dignity and life, damn it! And all of our struggles are connected, and we know that. We know this, but the people in power will try to convince us otherwise. And they try to drive us apart, and they especially try to drive apart the Jewish community from everyone else. They try to separate us from people we need to be in solidarity with. And, you know, sometimes, and especially in this moment, it can feel like they've succeeded. But we will not be separated. And I know that because Jewish tradition is steeped in justice. Tzedek, tzedek, tirdof, says the Torah. Justice, justice, you shall pursue. That is the lifeblood of being Jewish. And I refuse to let that be co-opted for autocratic, authoritarian agendas of supremacy. Fuck that! We will not let that happen. We will get a ceasefire. We will get a hostage deal. We will stop sending weapons to Israel. We will end the system of apartheid and occupation that is stretched across the Holy Land. We will no longer accept the status quo of violence against Palestinians that has been normalized. And we won't stop there, because we're going to build solidarity, true solidarity here and around the world, multiracial democracy, the only thing that will keep us safe, that will keep my community safe, that will keep all of us safe anywhere. We will cancel student debt. We will stop funding the war machine. We will take meaningful steps to protect our communities and our beautiful planet from climate change. And we will build the country that we deserve. Our leaders, my former boss, is failing us. And it's time to remind them that they work for us, not the other way around. And you know, we're told all the time that the future that we know we deserve is politically impossible, right? That it's not feasible. And to that I say, who gets to decide what is possible or not? We do, not them. We have to, and we can, imagine and create a better future because we know what the alternative is, and it is not acceptable. And look, you know, in this moment, I don't even feel like I have to imagine that future because I can feel it right now, here today. I can see it in this beautiful coalition of people that are here together, being in community with you, being in community with my friend Tarek. That future is not far away. It's not a mirage. It's right here. It's right now. And we can have it, and we're going to build it together. Thank you so much for being here today and for having me join you.
Show me what democracy looks like. I said, show me what democracy looks like. Show me what democracy looks like.
This is what democracy looks like.
Show me what democracy looks like.
This is what democracy looks like.
What do we want? Debt relief. When do we want it?
Now.
I said, what do we want?
Debt relief.
When do we want it?
Now.
What do we want?
Debt relief.
When do we want it?
Now.
If we don't get it,
Shut it down.
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 if we don't get it.
Shut it down.
And now, brothers and sisters, I want to bring forth a member of one of the most powerful education, fair court, social and economic justice organizations that is training and building up all the youth across the DMV. Harriet's wildest dreams. Welcome, Mo, ladies and gentlemen.
Welcome to DC. DC, the home of Chuck Brown. Oh, you don't know the sound?
Can I get a free Palestine? Free Palestine. I said free Palestine. Free Palestine. Free Palestine. Hey everyone, I want to welcome y'all to DC. My name is Mo. I'm with an organization called Harriet's Wildest Dreams. As in Harriet Tubman, yes, that Harriet. We are a DC-based and Black-led community defense hub fighting for DC statehood, racial justice, and building alternatives to police and prisons in the greater DC area. Now, all these amazing speakers have already named so many of our interconnected struggles, so I think I'm going to keep it pretty brief. I just want to take a few moments to highlight the connections between student loan debt and the impacts to our communities right here in the nation's capital. Of the total trillions of student loan debt, Washington, D.C. has the overall highest average federal loan debt of $53,782 per borrower. That is the starting salary of about a teacher or a nonprofit salary worker. If you know, you know. DC also has the largest racial wealth gap in this nation, with the median white household having 81 times the wealth of the median Black household in DC. If you don't think the weight of increasing debt factors into this, or is merely a problem of personal responsibility, then you are deeply misguided, misled, and miseducated. These conditions are untenable. I want to connect to y'all with a quick aside, just a little personal anecdote. I have been personally impacted by the staggering costs of higher education. I struggled to pay for community college almost 10 years ago now, and had to eventually drop out, make the decision to drop out. And since then, I was for a long time plagued with shame and wondered what my life would look like if I had attained that coveted piece of paper, a college degree. Now I'm organizing my way through an education. I am in the streets with my comrades and my community members engaging in political education, and it has never been clearer exactly how much work we have to do. With the latest paltry round of loan forgiveness, this administration has erased a total of $167 billion in student loans for 4.75 million people, or about 1 in 10 student loan borrowers. Contrast that with $300 billion and counting to Israel since its founding in 1948. Shame. An average of $3.3 billion a year, which has drastically increased over the last 7 months. This is beyond shameful. It boggles the mind in its moral depravity. And we are here to tell President Biden that this commitment to funding and arming this ongoing genocide, not just in the Gaza Strip, but all of historic Palestine, is harming his constituents and poor black people in particular. This Congress can make it a priority to condemn the only Palestinian in Congress for standing up to this profound violence. But prioritizing education is simply too big and too idealistic of an ask. We see that the money is there. The only thing that is lacking is political will. This president has set his foot on the gas and has declared to never abandon Israel and its so-called right to defend itself. We must fight this tooth and nail. Our collective future depends on it. And one final point, because I got to bring it back to the spirit of abolition. Incarcerated people are prohibited from receiving federal aid and loan forgiveness. And they often don't have access to higher education, which at one point was widespread and much more accessible in this country, and are much more likely to go into loan default, which deepens the crisis for both debtors and for their families. I will leave y'all with a simple echo of our message here today. We must fund education and all of our people's needs, not genocide. And if you refuse to live like this, let me see you raise your fist. If you refuse to live like this, let me see you raise your fist. Thank you.
Thank you, Harriet's wildest dreams. I do want to remind folks, water fountains over there. If you have a water bottle, fill it up, drink some water. We're going to be marching very soon. We've got about 15 minutes before we start marching. So now is the time to get your water situation together. All right, we got 3 more speakers. All right, next up, we have Anna from DMV Students for Justice in Palestine Coalition.
We want justice, you say how? Let the siege on Gaza now! Y'all can be louder. We want justice, you say how? Cancel all debts now! Let the siege on Gaza now! Cancel all debts now! Hello, I am a student organizer with the DC, Maryland, and Virginia Students for Justice in Palestine Coalition. I was recently privileged with the opportunity to organize and participate in the DMV encampment for Gaza, which was held in the liberated Shahada Square at George Washington University. Despite facing relentless repression and police violence from university administration and the federal government, the students and the surrounding community created the world that we strive to achieve globally, free of imperialism, Zionism, capitalism, colonialism, and all systems of oppression. When the Metropolitan Pig Department violently raided our encampment at 3 a.m. on May 8th, they aimed to silence us, boo, to silence us students and stop our movement. But I want to say right now that our love and commitment for Palestine is unshakable and will never be stopped, especially not by the cowardly actions of pigs acting as agents of a white supremacist imperial state. They may have physically arrested us that morning, but they will never seize our collective mobilization and advocacy for a liberated Palestine. They will never suppress our resistance. Shahada Square lives on in each of our souls, in each of our community members as we remember our martyrs and the reason for which we continue the struggle. Our money is used towards America's imperialist war-making and profiteering all over the world, including the disgraceful funding and support for the Zionist entities' settler colonial occupation and genocide. Boo! As the government callously and disgracefully spends billions of our money on the occupation and the white supremacist police state, we still do not have proper health care, affordable housing, climate initiatives, free education, or food safety. Blood money lines the pockets of arms corporations at the expense of our lives, and politicians sit silent across the aisle as they enable the genocide of the Palestinian people. Shame! This global imperial project seeks to render the oppressed and resistant as invisible, to criminalize their existence, and to neutralize them as a threat to the dominant hegemony. But we refuse to let this happen, and instead we will uplift our imprisoned brothers and sisters as they continue the fight to release themselves from the shackles of oppression. All fights for justice and for liberation are intertwined at their roots, and we must remember that all struggles are connected, especially in DC. In the neo-colonial, white supremacist capitalist system, no one is free until we all will be free. And we need more than a permanent ceasefire. That is only the beginning to the total liberation of Palestine, the continuation of the genocide by bloodthirsty Israel and the United States must not and will not stand. Every university in Gaza has been destroyed by the illegitimate Zionist regime. Shame! The Zionist regime shakes in fear because they know their American-funded guns and bombs have nothing on the resilient minds and the radical thought of the Palestinian people. We see the most bloodshed and the most violence when the oppressor is most afraid, because they are afraid of our educated communities, afraid of our collective radical political consciousness, afraid because we know liberation is near and we know how to achieve it. And especially as university students in the belly of the beast, we have the responsibility to stand up and fight back against the genocide. We owe it to Gaza, we owe it to Palestine, we gain our strength from Gaza and the Palestinian people. Students and the youth lie at the heart of every movement. Our voices, our mobilization, our power unsettles these institutions and these universities. They know the security of the imperialist regime is fragile and the chains of their oppression will soon fall. And we remain steadfast in our resistance. We see that liberation is on the horizon. We, as students, will never stay silent as our universities remain complicit in the Zionist regime's genocidal ground invasion of Rafah. We refuse to allow our universities to continue profiting off investments in the tech and weapons corporations arming the genocide. We refuse to allow our universities to pipeline us into the corporations that supply the genocide. Our universities and these corporations cannot survive without students, and we will never bow down. And the students say, divestment now, investment into our communities now, cancellation of all debt now. And as students across the country continue the fight for liberation, and as we join forces with all communities facing oppression, we remain disciplined, we remain educated, and we remain focused on our goals. Gaza is our compass. Each child, each prisoner, each martyr, freedom fighter, and person actively resisting in occupied Palestine is our compass. We will not rest until every single university divests from the apartheid Zionist settler colony, until Palestine is free, until liberation is achieved for all oppressed people worldwide. From the river to the sea, we will see a liberated Palestine within our lifetime. Thank you. We will not be pushed aside. Stop funding genocide. We will not be pushed aside. Stop funding genocide. I'd like to welcome Jenna, who's an NYU student that advocates for deoccupation and an end to settler colonialism. Please give them a warm welcome.
Thank you, comrade. Thank you to the Debt Collective for the work that you're doing, every organization that's present here today. Because we see that together, we do anything more than they could ever do. We see that the power comes from us to actually make material change our material conditions of living, and we see that we're able to imagine better futures by beckoning them into existence. So thank you. Thank you to the Debt Collective. Thank you for what you're doing here today. I'm just going to share a little bit about how it is exactly, just how it is that universities are connected to the genocide through our student debt, how they thrive off of our student debt. So debtors, especially student debtors, may struggle to tell you what it is that is the darkest and most twisted part of debt. Some may say the darkest thing is that we should have to plunge ourselves into financial ruin at the promise for future financial stability. Some may say it's predatory interest rates. For me, the darkest thing about debt is that debt itself becomes an economy and a system of exchange. And our debt buys the conditions to carry out genocide. Last week, I graduated from NYU. Thank you, but no, listen, because graduating from a university which enabled the conditions for there to be no universities left in Gaza means incredibly fucking little. In fact, I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed. So since the 2010s, NYU has taken on an expansionist regime which allowed it to take over 3.5 million square feet across New York, making it the second largest private property holder in all of Manhattan, making it its largest gentrifier, along with its purchase of land beyond the US in 13 international cities to create a swath of global campuses, including a campus in Tel Aviv. On the ruins of historic Palestinian villages. In order to finance this expansion, NYU had to buy property from and seek loans from JP Morgan Chase. As a reminder, JP Morgan Chase is known for its heavy profiteering from weapons manufacturing, funding arms companies, nuclear weapons, cluster munitions. These should all sound familiar because these were the instruments of war and destruction used on Palestine, Syria, Iraq, Yemen, and Afghanistan on black and brown children. So when banks buy up university debt, the cost is externalized onto students. The university expands, so the university owes money, so the expenses for us to attend the university surges. Our tuition money, our student debt, pays their debt to toxic financial institutions. Let me be clear, I will not be complicit in the occupation of my friends and my families. I will not be complicit in the occupation of my friends and their families. This is an iterative story, and it's a ubiquitous one, as our universities have become enmeshed with bloody money and criminal institutions. So for anyone who questions the intent and the aims of the Gaza solidarity encampments that have proliferated at over 90 college campuses, make no mistake, this is what it's all about. To keep our eyes on Gaza, to acknowledge our university's complicity, and to say that we will not have it any longer. to cut through the abstractions and obscurity of finance capital and say it's actually very simple. JP Morgan funds genocide, our universities are paving on top of ethnically cleansed land, and we students are getting fucking drained. This is the tragic irony of being a college student in the United States. We are steeped in the contradictions of borrowing simultaneously against our own futures and against Palestinian futures. Our entanglement in these cycles of debt places us in a direct relationship with the mass disabling and premature death of Palestinians. The money being used to finance the demolition of Gaza and to subsidize settlements and displacement in the West Bank, propped up by the IDF's violence, could indisputably be used to cancel student debt. But they refuse. They refuse to pull out of violence and put more into life. And in doing so, the United States gives us the middle fucking finger, declaring in no uncertain terms, not only that our education and our futures are not a priority, but in fact that the death of Palestinian children and students and eliminating their futures are far more important than funding our education would ever be. When our governments and schools see fit to deploy militarized police on students calling for a ceasefire, a cease genocide, and divestment of their own money from operations of violence, it becomes clear to us that our debt is not buying us education or access to spaces of intellectual and critical discourse. Our debt is delivering us into bondage. Bondage to the universities who can expel us and arrest us and suspend our financial aid if we even speak the word Palestine. Bondage to the financial institutions whose bloody investments our universities abet and upon which our universities rely to expand their campuses and pay out negligent administrators. We are sick of being debtors to these institutions and investors in their violences. We are going into debt to pay for space which isn't ours to claim. It's not ours, first, because it was never theirs to begin with. Palestinian land is not to be bought and sold by universities. Palestinian land is not to be used as the United States' political playground. It is to be defended. It is to be made livable for Palestinian men, women, and children. It is to be freed. No more debt, no more occupation. We demand as students and on behalf of Palestinian students who have been murdered and martyred that we fund education and never genocide. Fund our education, not the occupation. Fund our education, not the occupation. While we're learning, Gaza's burning. While we're learning, Gaza's burning! Gaza's burning! Free Palestine. Thank you, comrades.
Those students hit it. Thank y'all. That's the future. Thank y'all. Thank y'all. We have one more speaker. Thank you for hanging in there with us. We're going to be marching soon, within the next 5 minutes. So get up, get amped. We gotta make some noise when we get to the Capitol. Get ready. Before we head out, I want to introduce our last speaker, my friend and Debt Collective staffer, Maddie Clifford.
Hey y'all, how you doing? It's so good to be here today. First of all, I want to thank all of you, each and every one of you, for being here today. Also, the people in the back of me that are holding up signs in the sun, special shout out to you, okay? My name is Maddie, and I am the creative media strategist with the Debt Collective. Debt Collective, we are a family. We are the nation's first union made up of debtors. And I want to share a story with you all, okay? So one of my memories of my dad is going to see a movie together when I was about 15 years old. How many of y'all have family members who like to talk during movies? Okay, so my dad wasn't just talking during this particular movie. He was yelling at the screen. Okay, I thought he was going to throw popcorn at it or something. I was like, what's going on? The movie that we went to see together, and this memory I have of my father, was a movie called Life and Debt. It's a documentary, and it's about austerity measures enacted by the IMF and the World Bank on an island called Jamaica, okay? Jamaica is where my dad was born and spent the majority of his life. So between his bomba-clad system, right, yelling and throwing popcorn at the screen, I started to realize something about him. Debt enraged him. I always thought about debt in terms of numbers, but I began to see it as a psychological exchange between the borrower and the creditor. Debt is visceral, y'all. After my father passed away when I was 16, I traveled to Jamaica many, many times, and I saw that debt was on the furrowed faces of my family members as they had to struggle to make ends meet because of inflation. I learned about the sacrifices they made as they crossed borders for better wages. But why did the descendants of people who survived the brutality of the transatlantic slave trade, whose unpaid labor built the British Empire, owe billions of dollars to their former colonizers? I began to see similar hypocrisies in the history of Haiti and the experiences of Black Americans in the United States. Who owed who? Righteous anger is trivialized because it exposes hypocrisy and imbalance of power. Anger carries with it a kaleidoscope of emotions: grief, heartache, the unruly desire to get free. When we use anger with precision, without hurting ourselves, it is our compass. Why is anger such an important initial emotion for debtors to feel? Because those in power would rather we feel ashamed, silent, stifled. But when we tell our stories, not only do we release the stigma and shame, we redirect the intention, okay? And the attention. Here is the truth. 44 million Americans owe $1.7 trillion in federal student debt. Biden has the power to cancel all of this debt. This is an action that wouldn't cost the federal government a dime. An action that would help close the racial wealth gap. An action that would only boost the economy. He could do it today if he wanted to, but he's doing a piecemeal approach, like the announcement today. Here's the truth. 2/3 of student debt is owed by women, and Black women are disproportionately crushed by the student debt crisis. Student debt worsens every single economic issue. Here's the truth. 100 million Americans owe medical debt. People are avoiding doctors out of fear of the high cost of health care. Medical debt is killing us. Here is the truth. Millions of people in this country on the brink of eviction, homelessness, because they owe back rent. Meanwhile, private equity firms have bought up almost half of single-family homes. As MLK said, if you're not angry, you're not paying attention. I joined the Debt Collective in 2021, and I work on redirecting attention to what truly matters. What matters is solidarity. What matters is compassion for one another. What matters is protecting people and the planet. If I've learned anything from organizing, it's that politicians have the power, y'all. They have the power. And I have a bone to pick with Biden. I don't know about y'all, but I have a bone to pick with him. Biden has been saying one thing and doing something different. He said he's keeping his promises to do everything in his power to cancel federal student debt. But I'm 6 figures in debt. How much do you owe? Okay, yeah, yell it out, because I still got the debt, right? He's canceled more debt than any other president, but we need more. We demand more than breadcrumbs. We need a jubilee. We need a jubilee. We need more than a piecemeal approach. He has the power, so why is he saying one thing and doing something else? Biden has been saying he wants a ceasefire in Gaza. He said that at Morehouse College the other day. What? Why? How is he saying that when he's using his power to bypass Congress and send billions in military aid to Israel? Israel's committing a genocide against the Palestinians. There are no universities left in Gaza. Over 30,000 people have been killed: mothers, fathers, children, doctors, journalists, fellow human beings whose lives were brimming with promise, crushed beneath the rubble. And our tax money is funding it. If you're not angry, you're not paying attention, right? We are here to draw attention and to demand Biden take action. Fund education, not genocide. Biden, use your power to move swiftly to free debtors and stop using your power to fund the war machine. Right? We're taught to feel like personal failures for making the choice to pursue education. But why has the federal government been acting like a predatory lender? We're taught knowledge is power, but when students across the country put the theories they learned in school into practice outside of the classroom, raising their voices for a free Palestine, these students are arrested, brutalized, evicted, and suspended. Shame. We say enough is enough. Because there's a difference. There's a difference between just and unjust debts. Unjust debts are the debts we go into because we've been denied the means to live. Unjust debts are what happens when education, healthcare, and housing are commodities we can't afford. Just debts transform anger into unending love and repair. Just debts are what we owe each other to fight to end genocide, to live with compassion for humanity, to stand up for others, to demand reparations, to demand land back, to protect our precious planet, the water, the air, the soil. If our debts, if our student loans, our medical bills, and our back rent are rich people's assets, then organizing together and refusing to pay them back is the moral thing to do. And you all are making a difference. I want you to know you are not alone. When I say can't pay, you say won't pay. Can't pay. Can't pay. Can't pay. Together we're going to get ready. We're going to take this energy that we have right now. We're going to keep it going. We're going to engage in a nonviolent disobedience in front. So we need to line up now. I want everybody to stand up, and we're going to take this energy. Also, Rochelle has some housekeeping stuff to talk about for a second before we get over there, okay? Y'all ready? You feeling amped